Hello, my name is Sophie and welcome back to my channel. I've not been very good at uploading recently, but the start of a new month is the perfect time to come back because it's time for another wrap up and another TBR video. Hello, Editing Sophie here. I know that it's way too late in the month to be doing a wrap up and a TBR, but I filmed this and I'm really trying to get back into the YouTube habit, and I figure this is a good way to do it. So yes, I know this is super late. Thank you for being patient with me. Here's the video anyway. Though the fact that I only read 4 books in April, the fact I just called it April is not, it's a good indication of where my brain's at. The fact I only read 4 books in August is an indicator of how busy I was, had a lot going on, wanted to read a lot more than I did. But I did find 2 5-star books, so let's start with those. The first book I finished this month was 16 Souls by Rosie Talbot. This is a YA kind of gothic, horror, paranormal, ghosty story. Let's read the summary. In York, haunted souls are being hunted. When 16-year-old Charlie Frith realises dark forces have taken one of his ghostly friends, he must put aside his reclusive existence to protect them from a fate worse than death. He teams up with Sam Harrow, a new seer in town, and a ragtag group of spirits to unearth the chilling purpose behind the disappearances. As Charlie's romantic feelings develop for Sam, he will have to risk his life and his heart if he's going to save the afterlife. I thought this was so much fun. It had such a strong narrative voice. Charlie had such a clear character from the beginning that it just made it so immersive and made him feel so real as a person more than a character. But also the paranormal elements with the ghosts and the seers felt very believable. It's one of those paranormal stories that really hones in on the normal element because it feels like it could be real. It's one of those things that feels like it could be a real thing that, like, you know, people can do in secret. It's one of those where superpowers and like powers could be a thing. Not that is ghost seeing a superpower? I suppose it kind of is. I really enjoyed this book. It was super fun. I read it just after visiting York as well, so it made the setting even more immersive. It was so realistic to York as a city, and I really enjoyed it. Rated it 5 stars. It was so much fun, and also there was incredible representation. Our main character is gay, the love interest is trans, and the main character is also a below-the-knee amputee, a double below-the-knee amputee. So there's disability representation, there's so much representation in this book. It's just amazing. I really enjoyed this and I thoroughly recommend it. Then the next book I finished was Girl Goddess Queen by B. Fitzgerald. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling, and I went into it a little bit dubiously because I did finish another Hades and Persephone series, the one by Scarlett St. Clair, earlier this year. So I was a bit, not dubious, not that I thought this wouldn't be as good, but I was a bit worried that I hadn't left enough time between the two to be able to differentiate them in my head. And sometimes I think because they're based on the same core characters, there was little elements of, oh no wait, that was from that series and that was from this one. But I think these are very different retellings. For one, this is a YA retelling, so whilst a lot of Greek stories have a lot of mention of sex and sexual activity because the Greeks were a horny bunch, this doesn't have anything explicit. But it doesn't not mention it. I think the thing with YA is that it's often easy to think teenagers should not know anything about sex, but we all know that they do, and actually we teach them, or we should teach them, the things they need to know about sex to be able to do it safely and to learn about consent and all of that. And actually teenagers are known, like, you know, hormonally for being horny, so it makes sense that there is references to sex and wanting to have sex in YA books, but that doesn't mean we should have explicit smut in YA. I think that's a line that needs to be made very clear. But as I said, this is a Hades and Persephone retelling. I really liked the way that the main story was retold in a way that didn't have a massive age gap between Hades and Persephone. I thought that was really clever. I liked that it was set in antiquity, so it wasn't a modernization, and it kind of set up, it feels more like an alternative rather than a reimagining. I suppose the way that I'm trying to describe it in my brain is that sometimes when people do retellings, it feels a bit like when people write AUs in fan fiction. AU stands for alternate universe, so it's like when people take the cast of, I don't know why One Direction fan fiction is the thing that comes to mind, maybe because there's a lot of Harry Styles films, fan fiction book films that are being made recently, but you know, people will write One Direction fan fiction where they're all in a motorbike gang, or they're all doctors, or they all go to Hogwarts, you know, like that kind of alternate universe. I think some retellings can feel like an alternate universe retelling, whereas this feels like an alternate core story. It doesn't, yeah, I don't think I've explained that very well, but it felt like this could be the source material. It was really interestingly created. I loved the narrative style. It almost had a modern voice without being, you know, hip and trendy. It wasn't written, okay, what I'm about to say sounds like an insult, but it's not. It wasn't written in a super lyrical way. It wasn't trying to be artsy and deep and metaphorical. It was quite a straightforward narrative style, and personally I really like that, and it just made it really easy to read. The characters were both very sarcastic and they were funny, and I really enjoyed it. I don't think I've worded it very well, but I really enjoyed this, and I rated this 5 stars as well. I did tab it loads, but it's hard to see because I picked a tab colour that's the same colour as the sprayed edges, but I hope you can see there is a lot of tabs in this book, because there was just loads of bits that I really loved. And also this is very satisfying. Then the other 2 books I finished in August were 3-star books, and the first one of those was the next book in the Famous 5 series. If you've missed it, TLDR, when my husband and I got married, we asked our guests to gift us a copy of their favourite book, and in an endeavour to read them all, I set up a monthly book club where I'm the only one that reads anything. So is it a book club if I'm the only one doing it? Either way, my husband and I take it in turns to pick a book each month. I read it and he doesn't. But as a subsidiary of this, my mum gave us a box set of the Famous 5 books because they were core books of her childhood, and there's 10 of them. So rather than reading 10 books back to back, I've been trying to read one a month. I'm a little bit behind, but in August I read the 7th book in the series, which is 5 Go Off to Camp, and 5 did in fact go off to camp. Personally, I'm finding the series incredibly repetitive at this point, but I also understand that they are a set of children's novels, and that's kind of the children's formula. You take a set of core characters and you put them on a different adventure every time. That's how it works. And perhaps if I had read these as a child, I would enjoy them more. Not to say I'm not enjoying them, they're still enjoyable characters, they're well written. I co-read this by listening to the audiobook on Spotify, and it just helped me get through it. But at this point I do feel like I am just getting through it. I've got 3 left, and that is really incentivizing me to finish this series. That was the next book I read. Then the last book I don't have a physical copy of because I borrowed it from my library. It's the 2nd book in the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy, and that is Glint, and it was fine. It was another 3-star book. I'm not obsessed with this series, but I'm hooked enough to want to keep reading. The premise of the series is that the main character Aaron is the favoured woman, I don't know how else to describe it, of King Midas, who is another famed Greek character for having the golden touch. He can turn things gold by just touching them, and she is a woman that he gold touched, so she is pure gold all over. The 2nd book in a 6-book series, and what I'm thinking about it so far is that book 1 and 2 could have been condensed to be 1 book. It's very slow paced, not a lot really happens, and I don't really like the main character. It's one of those where I feel like I'm hate reading, but also I'm intrigued enough to want to carry on. Like I'm not, I borrowed it from the library. I could have just stopped after Guild. I do want to keep reading, but I'm not entirely sure why, because I don't really like Aaron as a main character. But I think it's mostly that I'm intrigued where they're taking the Midas character. It's a story that's about a Greek character, but it doesn't feel Greek at all. None of the other gods have been mentioned. No other Greek characters that I know of have been mentioned, and I think it's intrigue more than anything else, because I know that this is a Greek character and I love Greek mythology, which is why I wanted to read it in the first place, but it doesn't feel Greek at all. So I'm currently on hold. to get the 3rd book from the library, but after that the 4th, 5th and 6th books are not in the library, and I don't really want to use Audible credits on them, and I don't think they're on Spotify, so I may stop after book 3. If anyone knows of any ways to be able to listen to books 4 and 5, I think 6 comes out later this year, but to be able to listen to books 4 and 5 without having to pay for them or use credits, please do let me know, because my library selection is not the greatest. And that's everything I read in August. It was just the 4 books, 2 5-star reads, so can't really complain about that. Then we have the September TBR. I keep trying to make my TBR shorter and I keep failing. This month we have my Illumicrate book, my Afterlight book, my book club book, the Famous 5 book, 2 new releases, and then 2 books from my 24 and 2024 list. Update in regards to planning my TBR is that these will be my last Illumicrate and Afterlight books because I cancelled my subscription. I did a whole TikTok about it if you're interested in why I cancelled the subscription, but essentially it's that it was a lot of money for books that I'm not enjoying as much as I'm spending on. Like, there are books that I love that I would happily spend £35 on to get a box with a special edition and some bookish goodies, but a lot of the bookish goodies weren't that great. They're just filling up my house with stuff, and I don't think I've rated a single Illumicrate book higher than 3 stars, maybe 4 stars. And the Afterlight books are kind of the same. I generally enjoy the Afterlight books more because they are romance focused and I'm predominantly a romance reader. £25 for a special edition book is a lot of money. Like before, where the subscription came with a couple of bookish items, it was more value for money, I think. But £25 for a book that you're not always going to love. I think what really solidified the decision on Afterlight for me was when I rated one of those books 2 stars, and now I have a really pretty special edition that I don't want to keep, and I spent £25 on. It just feels like an absolute waste of money. So it might be something I come back to in the future, but for now I've cancelled those subscriptions, which also means I'll have 2 less books on next month's TBR, which I'm looking forward to. I think it gives me a bit of breathing room to actually be able to achieve my TBRs rather than having a super long TBR that feels a bit intimidating. So I do have 8 books on my TBR for this month, and it does feel a bit intimidating, but I'm reassured by the fact that next month will be a little bit lighter. She says, I say that every month and it doesn't always happen, but let's just jump right in. I started talking about Illumicrate and Afterlight, so let's start there. The Illumicrate book for August was Mistress of Lies by K.M. Enright. This edition is very, very pretty, and this book is about... I don't really know what this book's about. The daughter of a powerful but disgraced blood worker, Shan Leclerc, has spent her entire life perfecting her blood magic, building her network of spies and gathering scraps of power. Now, to protect her brother, she assassinates their father and takes her place at the head of the family, and that is only the start of her revenge. Samuel Hutchinson is a bastard with a terrible gift. When he stumbles upon the first victim of a magical serial killer, he's drawn into the world of sorcery and intrigue he's worked so hard to avoid, and is pulled deeply into the ravenous and bloodthirsty court of the Vampire King. Tasked to discover the identity of the killer cutting a bloody swath through the city, Samuel, Shan and mysterious royal bloodworker Isaac find themselves growing ever closer to each other. But Shan's plans are treacherous, and she lures Samuel into her complicated web of desire, treason and vengeance. He must decide if the good of their nation is worth the cost of his soul. Mistress of Lies is a darkly seductive romantasy debut with a villainous, bloodthirsty heroine who finds herself plunged into the dangerous world of power, politics and murder in the court of the Eternal King. That's one of those summaries where it tells you things, but I have absolutely no idea what's going on. Something about blood magic, the word vampire was thrown in. I feel like none of that summary ties together, and perhaps I'm feeling a little bit biased because I've not loved any of the Illumicrate books that I've read so far this year, so I feel like this is just going to be another one that I don't really like, but I'm trying to go in with an optimism and an open mind. So Mistress of Lies by K.M. Enright is the first book on my September TBR. Then we have, ironically, the last Afterlight subscription book that I received is one that I have been dubiously anticipating because it's Casey McQuiston's new release, The Pairing. Now, the summary of this book doesn't really appeal to me at all. Casey McQuiston is an author that confuses me because I've read 2 of her other books and I loved one and I really didn't like the other. I love Red, White and Royal Blue. That's one of my 6-star books. It's on one of my favourite books of all time list. I just love it with my whole heart and soul. But then One Last Stop I thought was really lackluster. I didn't connect with any of the characters and I thought it was just a bit weird. So I'm really dubious about this one because it could be another Red, White and Royal Blue, but it could be another One Last Stop. Again, trying to go into this with an open mind. I'm kind of mid about this cover, but also the normal cover is very mid as well. The edges on this one are incredible though, because the whole point is that they go on a, well, the plot of the book is that they go on a European food tour, I think. So it's like a whole map. It's really cool, and the fact it goes top and bottom is really cool. I'm really not sure about this one, but hopefully I'll be reading it in September. Then the book club book for this month is actually one that I'm not going to count towards my reading goal because it is The Forest of Doom by Ian Livingstone, which is kind of more like a game than a book. It's one of these almost D&D-esque choose your own adventure stories. So how you start your adventure, you kind of pick a character, design who you want to be, and then you have some background information, and then it's a case of, it's all in second person, which I think is really interesting, and it's you walk into this place and you do this and you answer and you roll dice, and then it's picking choices. So the first one I've come across is, he turns and slowly climbs the stone stairs, will you? Follow him up the stairs, turn to page 261, draw your sword and attack him, turn to page 54. So it's not one that you can read front to back, if that makes sense. So I feel like if I put this in my you know, in my story graph and say that this is 212 pages, and it says that I've read 212 pages when I haven't. So this is one that my husband and I are actually going to use as our date for this month. I had a goal for this year that we wanted to go on a date every single month, and we've been quite creative with them because, you know, dates can cost money, but they don't have to. So this is going to be our date activity for this month, where we're just going to sit and go through this book and adventure together from our living room. But I'm not going to count it towards my reading goal for the year. But it is in the wedding library, and it is our book club book for this month. So it's on the TBR, even though it's not really to be read, it's more to be played. Then the famous 5 book that's next on my list is 5 Get Into Trouble, which is the 8th book in the series. I have nothing to say about this series at this point. This one's only 185 pages. I should be able to get through the audiobook in maybe 2 hours, so might sit down and make an afternoon of it, who knows. Let's do the new release that I have in person. This book came out right at the end of August, so I didn't want to put it on my August TBR because I only would have had 2 or 3 days to read it, so it made sense to put it on this TBR. But one of the new releases I will be reading this month is Daydream by Hannah Grace. This is the 3rd book in the Maple Hill series that started with Icebreaker and then was followed up with Wildfire. Wildfire was one of my favourite books from last year. I read the whole thing in less than 48 hours, which for me is incredibly quickly. I loved that story so much, and I'm so excited about this. I got the Waterstones exclusive edition that has these beautiful sprayed edges, and I'm just so excited to read about Henry's character. I cannot wait to read this. I also have this on my Kindle because this is so pretty. I don't want to, like, and I'm someone who breaks spines, so I don't, whilst on the one hand I'd love this book to look well loved, on the other hand I want to keep it pristine. So I also have it on my Kindle, and I also have this special edition, and I'm so excited about it. This is almost certainly going to be my first read of the month. I'm currently finishing off my book club book for August because it was 538 pages, so it's taken me a little bit longer than I expected, but this is definitely going to be my next read and I cannot wait. The other new release that I will be hopefully getting around to reading in September is Richard Osman's new release. It's his first book that isn't part of the Thursday Murder Club series. It's his 5th fictional book, I believe, and that's We Solve Murders. I've pre-ordered this on my Kindle, so I'll be reading that one as an ebook. So that's another one I'll be reading as an ebook, and I'm really looking forward to it. I really like Richard Osman's style. I've listened to well, I've listened to all of his other books as audiobooks, so I may or may not use an Audible credit on this one, but I have already paid for the Kindle one, so maybe I should read it with my eyes. Don't know, haven't decided yet. I've got 2 audiobook credits that I haven't used yet, and I need to figure out what I'm going to be spending those on. But We Solve Murders is going to be the next book that I read. That's my new release for next month. I don't really know anything about it, but I like Richard Osman as an author and I trust him as a crime writer, so I'm happy to go into this one blind, and I think that often makes them more enjoyable. I'm not much of a crime reader, but I feel like if you can go in as blind as possible, is probably the best way to go into it. Then we have the 2 books from my 24 in 2024 for this month. I have a spinner with the rest of my 24 in 2024 list on it, and I just used that. I did screen record it, so I'll put the footage in here. I used that to select my 2 books for this month. Realistically, I need to be reading more than 2 a month to actually get through the rest of this list, but that's a bridge that we will cross at a later date. The first book that came up when I spun my spinner was Verity by Colleen Hoover. I know there's a lot of controversy about this author. BookTok loves to hate this author, but commercially she's very, very successful, and I feel like she's one of those authors that will always be commercially successful and will always be hated on TikTok. But I have read a couple of her other books and I did really enjoy them. This one has been personally recommended to me from people in my real life, and it fits with the kind of crime theme of We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. So Verity by Colleen Hoover, I've heard incredible things from a variety of sources, and I feel like when you've seen reviews from very different readers who all like this for very different reasons, it's very often a good sign. So I think this one is going to be very bingeable, and the back tells me that it is a TikTok sensation with over 200,000 5-star reviews. Hoping for the best on this one. And then we have the last book on my TBR coming from my 24 in 2024 list is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I'm so sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this surname. This is another super popular book on the internet. I picked this up secondhand, which is why it looks a little bit beaten, but that also means I feel less pressure to keep it precious. I've heard incredible things about this book, and I'm not entirely sure it's for me, because I think it's going to be very tense. I think it's going to make me a bit stressed, but in a good way. I am excited about reading this. This one I might pick up as an audiobook actually. I feel like that's a good idea. But yes, I've heard incredible things and I'm very intrigued to find out more about this book, because it's one of those books that I've heard a lot about but I don't really know anything about, which I think is always a really good thing, because with a lot of popular books, you know, maybe the main spoiler comes out, or like big plot points come out, and then you often feel like you've read a book even though you haven't read a book. I don't feel like that with this one, and I'm excited to become part of the camp that have read this book. 7 physical books, 8 books on my TBR total, and that's my September TBR. Do I envision I'll be able to get around to reading all of these, considering it is the 4th of September when I'm filming this and I still haven't finished the books that I was reading in August? Realistically, no. September is my birthday month, so it will either go the way that I'll be too busy and I'll have too many plans to actually sit down and read, or I'll have loads of downtime and I'll be able to read more than usual. So it really could go either way, but I feel like now that we're in the last kind of third of the year, I'm feeling very motivated with my reading. I'd really like to finish some of my lists. I'd like to finish my 24 in 2024 list. I'd like to get to some of my backlist books. I've got lots of plans. I don't necessarily have enough reading time to allot with those plans, but I'm going to try my best. I'm very much looking forward to reading these. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry I've been away for a little while, but I'm going to try and make this work. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're reading a great book, and I'll see you next time for another bookish video. Bye!